More than a century after its tragic sinking, Titanic remains one of the most famous and fascinating ships ever built, capturing the imagination of people around the world through its stories of ambition, luxury, and loss. In today's episode of the English Right Now podcast, we're exploring the history and legacy of the Titanic. My name is British English teacher Roy, and joining me is my dear friend Rob. Hello.
Good afternoon, Captain. Sorry, do you like me sort of sea shanty kind of style?
Fantastic. As we say in the UK, don't give up your day job.
No, okay.
That's great.
I was trying to be a salty sea dog, basically.
You were, weren't you? But what I'm worried about is the Titanic. The captain went down with the ship.
Oh yes, okay.
So yeah, that's what I'm worried about. I'm worried if that's what your plan is for me. So yeah, Titanic, RMS Titanic. It's amazing, isn't it, that the Titanic is still very much talked about. Very much talked about all these years ago. Do you remember when it went down?
I don't.
It's a loaded question.
But I have, of course, seen the film Titanic, so I know exactly what happened. Yeah,
of course.
Yes. No, it was an amazing ship, though. I know we all know the history of it because we're kind of taught it at school. And even though it was 1912, so over 100 years ago now, here we are still talking about it because it was an incredible ship, of course, but also an amazing, sad but an amazing story as well of what happened.
I mean, yeah, it was the 15th of April 1912, and it struck an iceberg. I think it was it William Murdoch who ordered the ship? Iceberg basically did that, and at 11:40 he spotted an iceberg immediately ahead, and he sort of ordered the ship to be steered, but it was too late. And then about 2.5 hours later, she went down. We often say she for a ship, don't we? She went down.
Yes. Yeah, we often refer to ships as female, don't we?
Yeah. Why do you think that Titanic has really captured the imagination?
Well, I guess because she was an amazing structure for a start. Nothing had been seen like that before. Of course, they said that Titanic was unsinkable, the unsinkable ship.
I've got a little fact for you here.
Go on.
They never, while it was captured by the public imagination, it was never used. It's been exaggerated. So the ship was never officially marketed as unsinkable, but media reports and public opinion heavily promoted the idea that it was practically impossible to sink her. So yeah, no, it's an interesting one.
But the ship was full of luxury, wasn't it? It was luxurious. It was incredible that at the time you could sail across the ocean to see America. Just an amazing kind of bit of engineering.
Yes. So yeah, unlike some of its competitors, the Titanic wasn't designed to be the fastest ship. She was designed to be the most luxurious ship in the world.
Yeah.
Do you know where she was built?
Well, she was built in Belfast, I believe, because I went there a few years ago. There's a fantastic museum now where you can see all about the history of Titanic and how it was built. And the museum is located on the dockside where the ship was built.
There are no flies on you. I thought I'd trick you there, but you're right. She was built in Belfast by Harland and Wolff. And I remember when I went to Northern Ireland, I actually saw the sign Harland and Wolff, and I was like, oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. You know, it's still there, and it's quite incredible. Yeah. She wasn't the first. So she was one of three. She had two sister ships. There was the Olympic, then Titanic, and then Britannic. So there were actually three ships. But we're talking about this. Yeah, she was, I think in the film they call her the ship of dreams and all this. I don't know if that was actually used, but it was somewhat. I mean, it's still, I think it's a mixture of this beautiful, luxurious ship, arguably one of the most famous ships ever created, and the tragedy of it.
Yes.
So she sank on her maiden voyage. A maiden voyage is the first journey made by a ship. I think that's what makes it even more tragic. She never even completed one journey.
That's right. Very sad. So she was built in Belfast, we say. I think she sailed across the sea to Liverpool and picked up in Southampton, didn't she?
Yeah.
And then picked up passengers in northern France and then sailed off into the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah.
I know she went to Southampton, then she went to France, and then I think somewhere in Ireland as well. I think in Ireland.
Yes.
Before sailing off. She was an ocean liner, and this is a large passenger ship designed for long distance sea travel. And like you say, a lot of people generally believe she was unsinkable. Basically, she couldn't go down. I was obsessed with Titanic and kind of everything, because I live on the Isle of Wight, opposite Southampton, and there are photos, there are images. You know, of course, you never know what's AI these days, but there are images of Titanic coming out of Southampton for the first and last time, basically.
Yeah, must have been an amazing sight, particularly in those days where there weren't many big things around. There's a huge ship, in the water and floating on water. Must have been an incredible sight.
Well, Titanic itself means huge, doesn't it? Yeah, Titanic, Titanic proportions. It's not the most used word we have, but yeah, she sank on a maiden voyage. And I think the other thing as well, there are lots of stories around it still that people talk about, like these little kind of human stories. Like there's the story of the couple or the person that decided to stay with her dog. And she was quite a rich lady. She was offered a place on a lifeboat, but she refused, so she could stay with her dog. There's a story of a cat, the ship's cat, because quite often these ships had cats to kill the mice and the rats, got off and wouldn't get back on Titanic, I think in Southampton. And this cat took all of its kittens. Whether it's a lot of these things will be fabricated over time.
Yeah, but there's that story about the band playing on as the ship sank into the cold water. The band keep everything calm, good, British spirit, carry on.
Yeah, and
going.
Apparently that is true. A lot of people have corroborated that story. It's a true story that the band kept playing because they weren't going to get a place. I mean, they kept playing until pretty much, I think, the lights went out roughly. So as we say, it struck an iceberg, which is a huge sort of structure of ice. It struck an iceberg, huge iceberg. And it collided. There was a collision, which means it hit it. In other words, collision. And what happened? There are lots of debated theories about Titanic and how she went down. Was it the Titanic? There's lots of conspiracy theories as well. We're not getting into. But effectively, what most people believe happened is that the iceberg opened up some watertight compartments. So there were these spaces, these areas, and it opened up, but it opened up just one more than was necessary to stay afloat. So basically it flooded the front of the ship, these watertight compartments, one after one, and went down quite rapidly.
Yes, quickly. Yes. Yeah. So it kind of lost its balance and sort of tipped down, went down, sank fast. Of course, it was very heavy, wasn't it? Big ship made of metal. Didn't they send out a distress signal? I mean, surely they did that.
They did. And I think the Carpathia was the first one to respond, but it was too late. I think they did. They fired it out. But this is the thing as well. You're talking mid-Atlantic at night. No ships around. I mean, it's a lot of space. So there's lots of ideas that people did pick up the distress signals. Distress signals that usually a thing they fire, like a flare gun, or they put out the "we are sinking." There are theories that some people picked up on the signal, but they didn't respond, and so on. So there's a lot about it. But I think one of the biggest things about the ship is the lifeboats. So a lifeboat is the emergency boat that people get into when a ship is sinking. Yeah. And there weren't enough. There weren't enough lifeboats. So there were more than 2,200 passengers and crew on board, and they only carried 20 lifeboats, which was enough roughly for 1,178 people. So there weren't enough lifeboats. And some people say it was aesthetic. They didn't want to put it on there because it looked ugly. the other thing as well, when the lifeboats were going into the water, they weren't filled as well, so they were half full. So you know, and in the end of the 2,200, somewhere between 1,490 and 1,517 people, roughly around there, died, which is nuts.
It is. It is. So I guess a lot of people drowned, of course, couldn't swim. If you jump into that icy cold water, you can get hypothermia as well, can't you?
Yeah.
Just your body just shuts down because of that sudden coldness.
Shock. Yeah, you get hypothermia. A lot of people would have died into the water. Died in the water. They've dived in, and then they'll just I think it's incredibly haunting, this idea that there were never enough lifeboats, probably because of maybe a bit of arrogance, like, oh, she's unsinkable. This idea that we talk about, but also the fact they didn't even fill them. So I mean, that's absolutely insane for me. You know, that lack of care for human life and safety that still resonates, and the human stories mixed in, this perfect, beautiful, luxurious vessel going down. But there are two things that always haunt me about Titanic. I'm gonna share them with you, because they're two things that people don't often discuss. So the first is that when the ship went down, there would have been people still inside the ship in air pockets who couldn't escape because the corridors were flooded, but they were in their rooms, trapped in potentially in air pockets. And I always think how horrific that must have been for the last few seconds, knowing that the ship was, feeling the ship going down as you're trapped inside. And obviously they would have died because of pressure. That terrifies me. But the other thing, when the lights went out, there would have been nothing. It was pitch black. So people would have been there in the freezing Arctic air and the kind of the water, but there would have been in the freezing air, and there'd be no way to see what was going on. You know, when we watch the film, we can still see, you know, oh, no, people, you know, but when Kate Winslet is on that board, I mean, that became a thing. Why did Jack have to die? You know, these kind of things. She wouldn't have been able to see Jack. She wouldn't have been able to see anybody else. So that's, you know, it would have been like having your eyes covered. That terrifies me.
Yeah. And you mentioned being trapped in your cabins. I mean, again, I'm only getting this from the film, really, but of course, the poorer people who were down in steerage class, like third class, were sort of down below, weren't they, in the cheaper cabins, and more likely to have been trapped in the water as it sank.
Yeah, and that's tragic. But this is the thing. I mean, moving away from those, I mean, you can't not talk about Titanic and talk about the tragedy, because I mean, a lot of it was aesthetic as well. I mean, there were 4 smokestacks, 4 chimneys. So they had these 4, but only 3 were functional. So one of them was solely for aesthetic purposes, which makes me wonder if that is true. But hypothermia, right, like you say, it went down. It split into 2 halves apparently. So the back half went down after the front half apparently, or you know, and you know, there's that moment, isn't there, with in the film with Kate Winslet on the back of the boat as it plunges into the water, and apparently that was pretty real. There was a survivor, talking much later about how he was on the back of the boat and he saw people falling off. So that bit is very accurate to what happened, which is sad. I mean, it's insane. But there were so many casualties, people killed or injured in the disaster. And then she went down and nobody knew exactly where she went. That's the thing as well. And I think that created a bit of the legacy, because it was this mist. Because the thing is, she was huge. She was nearly 900, you know, she was huge. And for some people can't understand how you can't find a ship that big. But of course, she went really far down. She was around 3,800 meters below the surface, and the Atlantic Ocean is huge.
Yes. And the ocean at that point is very, very deep, isn't it? As you say, very hard to dive down there. Of course, there have been trips, haven't there? Some tragic, actually, in little submarines to go and see the remains of the Titanic. I don't know. It's a kind of graveyard, isn't it? It shouldn't be disturbed anyway, should it? Really?
I'm with you on that. I think you find it, Yeah, brilliant. But I'm with you on that. You know, I would love to have seen. I'd love to get a time machine and go back and see Titanic, and probably tell them to get binoculars and look out. I'd probably change the course of history forever. But I wouldn't. I don't think I'd want to go down there and see it. It's eerie. It's uncomfortable. It's a weird feeling. So yeah, and the thing was, it was not discovered until 1985 as well. That's another thing.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah. Wow. So I think there was like a good 70 years of not knowing where she was. So again, it's this. I think it's a lot of these things, like they become a mystery in itself, and when it's finally discovered, then then suddenly people start talking about the tragedy.
That's right. But we do remember it, obviously, because we're talking about it now. We do commemorate it, don't we? I mean, there were big events, weren't there, when it was the 100th anniversary since the tragedy. So we do commemorate it and still remember what happened, basically.
Yeah, and there are museums in places like you said, Belfast. There's one in Southampton as well, and it's just it's intriguing. But I think what captures people's imagination is the what if factor. What if only one compartment less had been opened? Would she have made it to New York? What if she'd completed a maiden voyage? How long would she have gone for? What if there'd been more lifeboats? What if there's so much? And there was even, you're right about the distress signals, the distress rockets going up. So there was another ship called the SS Californian, I think it was, and it didn't respond effectively to distress rockets, which also created one of the biggest controversies. So in the end, possibly some of it could have been avoided. Some of the tragedy, people could have got onto the ship. More people could have been saved. But then the actual rescue ship, which was RMS Carpathia, arrived around 2 hours after Titanic sank. So all those people that could have survived for a short period of time in the water, then died from hypothermia, like you say, which I think is even more tragic.
Yeah. Of course, if this happened today, we have got things like satellite navigation, haven't we? And all that kind of stuff that hopefully would show up things like icebergs, can quickly send out emergency signals. Been so different if something similar like that happened today because of the technology. But then they had, as you say, distress signals, firing a rocket in the air, maybe Morse code. They were probably tapping Morse code, like an SOS message, that sort of thing. But you couldn't get on your radio and call for help, could you?
But there's so much. I mean, like there were iceberg warnings, but again, that kind of this idea that it's unsinkable, this kind of thing, which wasn't marketed, because I don't think marketing would ever use the word sink to talk about a ship, even if it's unsinkable. But there's the whole thing, should the captain have slowed down because of the ice warnings? And then it opened up a lot of questions, because there were a lot of people, both rich and poor, that sank and died. But then the class difference survival rates were different. So more people survived from first class than they did from third class. So a lot of people, the percentages were different.
And did more women and children survive? Because kind of the rule is it's women and children first in an emergency.
Yes, it was, wasn't it?
They got on the lifeboats.
And there were stories like that as well. The bit in Titanic, the film, where there's an elderly couple on the bed together. Do you remember that bit?
Yeah.
That's apparently based on a real life couple. Something, I can't remember exactly what happened. I think they either refused the spaces to let younger people go, or the wife had the option to go but wouldn't leave the husband. So they chose to stay together and go in their cabin.
Yeah.
So I always find it fun. I mean, Titanic film, it's a great film, one of the highest grossing films of all time. Brilliant piece of drama, but there were so many real stories on Titanic. Why did they create the characters anyway? That's so many. But this is the thing. I think the overall question is: was Titanic a tragedy caused by bad luck or human error? Go on, answer it.
So it's a question that we'll carry on trying to answer probably for another 100 years plus, won't we? But it's still a huge bit of our history, isn't it? Modern history here in the UK.
I think it's the, I don't know if it holds up, but it's arguably the most, I think it's the maritime relates to the sea, maritime disaster that claimed the most lives. Certainly was for a long period of time. I think it still is. And it captures, it's, I think for most people, the idea of being on that ship and it going down and the helplessness, it terrifies most people. That's my idea of a real nightmare.
Yeah.
So I think, and still with the mystery, how did it exactly sink? Was it, the conspiracies creeping in? Was it an insurance thing? And people still debate these sort of things, and that's what I think keeps the legacy alive, both the human element and what we can learn from a disaster.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, I'm going to say, if you want to support this podcast, please do remember you can always buy us a cup of tea. Buy a cup of tea for Rob, myself.
Thank you.
Down in the comments. But I just want to say, Rob, thank you for joining me. Everybody, thank you for listening to us today. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I will see you in the next one.
Yes. No, it's been fascinating talking about it, hasn't it? Thank you very much. See you next time.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.